Hello, hello. My name is Travis. This is Oscar Mike Radio number 205 on August 27th, 2020. And I'm joined by Marine veteran Aaron Lawrence, and now is a lawyer, and not really something you see a whole lot of, but I know there's several people who serve the military and are now lawyers. Aaron, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Hey, great to be here, Travis. Thanks for having me.
As we start out, I just want to say first and foremost, are the hurricanes going to affect you all? Because they're close to Shreveport, or the path is.
The path is, by the time it gets up here, it'll be rain and some wind, and I'll be I don't know if I'll be smoking a cigar on my porch, but I'll definitely be able to enjoy a beer inside without a problem.
Well, then tragedy is averted. Ruston is not too far from Shreveport, where I joined the Marine Corps from. Did you always live in the northern part of Louisiana?
I didn't. I was actually born in Baton Rouge and moved to Dallas and was recruited out of Dallas.
Okay.
So that whole Mississippi River divide, I got to be Best Coast. I didn't have to, suffer sand fleas and nonsense.
Now, we just had the Reaper.
That's right.
I've never heard a Paris Island Marine volunteer to go to Camp Pendleton and do the Reaper ever.
No, no.
So I'm always curious about that. You served the Marine Corps. What did you do in the Marine Corps?
I served '05 to 2011, and I started off as a winger, did aviation ordnance, and then through some fortunate drinking buddies and things like that, I picked up and ended up going EOD. So.
Oh, nice. So you did that, and did you deploy? Did you go overseas? Were you in Afghanistan?
Deployed Iraq, Afghanistan, Afghanistan again, and then when I got out after my time in 11, I went back as a civilian contractor both to Iraq and then Afghanistan again. And then aside from those, I did a Pacific Rim Ordnance inspection tour, so I got to see some island stuff too.
So you do all that, and something comes over you, and you decide to go to law school. Now, how did that all get going? Because that's quite a jump from one path to the path of practicing law.
It is, and I'm finding there are a decent amount of prior Marine attorneys, but most of them were officers when they were in. You still got some guys who got drafted back in Vietnam hanging around, and so they did enlistment, but very few by choice. And the way it came about for me was, like I said, when I got out, I went into the private security field because, EOD didn't have a whole lot of practical civilian applications. So I didn't want to be a cop. So my next move was just, let's do the same thing, get paid a whole lot more and have some fun. And so ended up in operations with the security team that I was, the security company that I was with, and did some domestic stuff after the overseas stuff. And so we did executive protection in Southern California, and the owners of it, one was an attorney, and figured out that I actually knew how to write with my crayon before I ate it. So we helped each other out, and I helped him write some policy and kind of did the grunt work, the research, stuff like that. And he said I had a knack for it, and if anything ever happened, I should consider law school. Well, not too far after that, Condor, the gear company, bought out the security company that I had and used them as a test and evaluation wing. And so I was kind of left without a job. Didn't want to work for Condor. Had seen corporate America a little bit. Knew I didn't want to do that. And so I figured the best way to reinvent myself and get out there where I can actually just work for myself is going to be to invest in myself and go to law school. So I was only about 12 months away from my undergrad degree. So I finished that and kind of went right into law school after that. Applied while I was finishing up undergrad and got accepted.
And you did your undergrad, did you do it in Louisiana or some other state?
I finished at University of North Texas, which is, just north of Dallas, is where I'm from. So it helped me when I moved back from California. I knew I didn't want to stay in California. I knew I didn't want to practice law in California. After my research, talking to people, I knew wherever I went to law school was going to very heavily impact where I could get a job, diploma recognition, that kind of thing. And just what bar I was going to be taking was going to be really important to me. So I wanted to make sure I went to law school, at least in the region of the United States I wanted to stay in. And I knew that was the South. So I wanted to come back home.
So living in Louisiana, we moved there when I was a teenager, and taking Louisiana state history and some other things. There's some very peculiar things about Louisiana versus the other 49 states. For example, we don't have counties, we have parishes. And also, it's the only state that, in my understanding, practices this thing called Napoleonic Law from the French. Can you just briefly describe what that's like versus, say, someone practicing law where I'm from now, Massachusetts?
Sure. So Napoleonic Law gets its name obviously from Napoleon, and the deal was it's kind of a fun story. It's not a total nerd, but it's pretty gangster about, because Napoleon was out, he was conquering all these tribes, and all these groups of people, which all had different ideas about the ways things should run or shouldn't run. Should women have rights? Should women have property rights? Should being married mean the men gets all the men get all the women's stuff, or that they're together? I mean, all these things. And so he wanted a uniform code across his empire, so everyone operated under the same laws. That way he could send lords from over here to govern over there, and they wouldn't be too confused or have to relearn a new set. So what he did is he commissioned these folks from all these different tribes that he had conquered to come together and argue what the code should be. And hence we got the first Napoleonic Code. And it contemplated things like community property, which a lot of different states have, and stuff like that, which has actually got Germanic and Viking history, because the women raided with the men. So if we go out and we're going to get gold doubloons and whatever, then hey, that belongs to both of us, because your chick was right there next to you storming the beach. And so a lot of things like that come through, but everything goes back to a code and a set of rules. Whereas English law is a lot more judge-made. It's less legislation. It's less. It's not. It doesn't involve scholars as much. I don't want to say it's less scholarly, but they don't really bring law schools or legal experts in to write the laws. It's just legislation, and then the judges interpret, and that's it. We actually have a code where we start with. So just because a judge went all crazy on Tuesday doesn't mean we can't get back to square one on Wednesday. Whereas other 49 states and the rest of the common law world go back to, it's based on precedent. They could say, well, yesterday the judge ruled this way, and that actually means something. The way that doesn't have to mean as much down here.
So really, the rule of law is based on the situation, and then based on the code, is my understanding?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you're enlisted, you do EOD, you do some work outside, you get your law degree, and then what happens? You could go to the big city, and people have these real weird ideas about how the court system and lawyers work from TV, but I can tell you I've learned that that's not the case. So where did you go after you got your you passed your bar?
Once I passed the bar, I got married. So I just, asked my wife, AKA the CO, all right, well, where do we go? And she said, we're going home. And I said, all right. So for her, that was Ruston. And I didn't really have a home to argue with her about. So her dad's an attorney, and naturally he was kind enough to hire me. And I've got a pretty decent business background, because anytime I wasn't deployed, I was always either buying a business, working in a business, owning a business, whatever. And so when he said, hey, I need to grow my firm from me, just himself, for 30 years into 2 and now 4 attorneys, because let me back up a little bit. My sister-in-law and my wife, my sister-in-law just graduated law school from Penn State, and my wife graduates next year. So they're all going to join as well. And so, he had a decent base for 30 years, referrals and whatnot. But when he's going to expand it to 4 attorneys, it got a little, got a little over his head. So, I'm sorry, he got in a little over his head. And so my business background, marketing background, stuff like that was pretty welcome. And I'm lucky in that respect. So I built a website and kind of grown us, and, doing things like this and interviewing with you and stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I'm going to follow up with, again, a lot of people see the lawyer's office in the New York City or,
Right.
Dallas or LA, and they have a certain perception of lawyers. But, one thing you don't see a whole lot of on TV or even in documentaries is that smaller area lawyer. Now, Ruston, it's been a while since I've lived in Shreveport, but Shreveport's about 300, 400,000 people with the Bossier right next to it. Ruston is significantly smaller, but it's my understanding, Aaron, that, with things changing in the economy, COVID-19, impacting like rentals and stuff like that, you all can be very busy practicing law in a non-metropolitan / rural area. Am I reading that right?
That's right. I don't know necessarily that we would be busier than, the law is changing for everybody, and, the facts are moving across the board, but some different, you've mentioned a couple of times going from, TV lawyer to what's it like in real life. And one of the biggest differences I would say is surprises. I get it, to make good TV, you have to have what we always call Perry Mason moments, the gotcha moment, oh, he admitted it on the stand. Okay. I do about 50-50 criminal defense law and small business law. And in both, the biggest goal is to never be surprised. So that's, whether that's anticipating facts, asking the right questions, just talking to opposing counsel, things like that. But if he surprised me, one of two things happen. Either I didn't do my job or he did something unethical. And I think that's the biggest difference for a lot of folks that they're surprised by is I can tell you what's going to happen when we go into court, if we even go to court. And that would be another difference is people think a lot of things go to court. You don't want them to go to court. You've already got two more attorneys involved. So that's now 4 parties. You got the 2 people against themselves and each of their attorneys. Last thing you want to do is introduce a 5th set of opinions, which we call the judge, much less 12 more opinions that would be a jury. So, it's difficult enough getting everybody on the same page when you only got 4 people. So the numbers break down like this, so I've been told, is out of problems people have with each other, 1% go and talk to an attorney. 10% of that 1% hire the attorney. 10% of the things that see an attorney make it to court. And 1% of the things that make it to court make it to a verdict by a judge or a jury.
So that's like 1/1000th of 1%.
That's right. That's right. And there's argument on why. Attorneys will tell you it's because we're very, very good.
Of
right?
course,
we don't
of course.
need a judge. We don't need a jury, right? That's what we'll say. But the honest fact is, we've had 200 plus, over 200 years of law and recorded documentation of how things are going to shake out. Well, every time a new law comes down, we all update contracts. We all update, arbitration agreements, mediation agreements, without getting too, boring or in the weeds. We're staying ahead of these things. So the whole job, you hire a lawyer so he can predict what the judge is going to say, what the other lawyer is going to say. What I can tell a lot of my clients is, hey, listen, don't worry. When your opponent hired counsel, that lawyer is going to tell them what you want me to tell them. They're going to say, hey, you're being ridiculous. You're being stupid. The other side's going to win. So we can just sit back. And that's why a lot of times clients will get upset or they'll get frustrated and not understand why the attorneys for both parties get along and have a beer afterward, after court, is because I'm probably telling my client what he wants me to tell what he knows I need to, and vice versa. The lawyers are usually, when they don't get too emotional, they're pretty much the neutral party, which is what you want.
So you want to take I noticed that the lawyers take the emotion out of it, and it's just business. It's just two parties trying to work something out.
We try to. That's been the way I've been taught to practice law. It's how I found the most success. Anytime I have gotten emotional, one of the lawyers in my firm says, hey, reel it back in. And you take a deep breath and you calm down. And it's not, I'm getting paid to fight this fight, but it's not my fight, which is why I get to see clearly and see a few more options. And I can clearly see who the knucklehead is. And if it's my own client, I can tell them. You're paying me to give you my opinion. My opinion's you're being unreasonable.
So we are in an area outside of a major metropolitan area. You're dealing with a lot of small business law, and small businesses are the backbone of any community. I have to ask this, with COVID-19 impacting businesses so greatly, whether it's New York City or, out in Wyoming, what kind of legal challenges are business owners facing? How does your firm help them, move around and be adaptable during this time?
Well, one of the things my firm does, and I can happy to say it was my idea, is that we do kind of a more predictable basis as far as payment goes. So I know if you come to me, Travis wants to set up a business, okay? He wants to set up Oscar Mike Radio Incorporated. I know you're going to need certain things. You're going to need articles of organization. You may need a contract, one or two, if I presume somebody's going to want to pay you for your services, or you may have to buy something and you're going to need a contract. So I know you're going to need a few things, and I go over with you what you think those things should be, and what I think they should be and why. And once I do that, I can say, all right, stick with me for a year, and I can spread this price tag out, as opposed to, hey, come see me when you have $5,000, or $3,500 or whatever it may be, depending on what you want. And so spreading that hurt out, spreading that pain point out, it allows you to get up and running and earn some money so you can actually pay me with it. Because I've been a small business owner, and I'm still in a certain way a small business owner here with the firm. So I understand that the cash flow issues and how those things help. Other things I can do, again, since I've been there and I know what your hurt is and I know what you're going through, I can talk to you a little bit more and offer a little bit more advice and mentoring, having not only run a small business before law school, but now run a small business after law school. And here's some pitfalls I wish I had looked out for. And did you think about this? And things like that.
So one of the things that interests me is I noticed that in bigger law firms in the area that I'm in, it gets very impersonal real quick. You're just a case file. You might not even see an attorney for the first couple of weeks, even month, before anything happens. You're going to talk to their paralegal, their administrative assistant, and research people before you can talk to them. It would seem that in your situation, you get to really work with the business owner. In this case, we'll talk about criminal law here in a second, and become part of their process and business and form that relationship versus a larger law firm.
Oh, I insist on it. That is the difference. And you're going to pay a little less because we don't rent a skyscraper. You're going to pay a little less because I don't have 25 staff. I have 5. But you're going to get a little more because I know I'm going to run into you in the grocery store. If you sell something I use, I'm going to come buy from you. And so I'm going to have egg on my face if you're sitting there saying, I've been trying to get a hold of you, Aaron, where you been? So living and working in the same community has that dichotomy of a relationship where I have to mind my business. Otherwise, I'll get outed. But it's more than that. We choose our clients very carefully. We choose who we want to be in business with because, with a smaller price tag on our rent, on our offices, on our staff, I'm not up against the gun where I have to take your money. I can choose to take your money or not. And when the good thing that a lot of business owners don't understand is, if you have a smaller firm like ours at a phone call and at a text distance anytime you want, if something happens, if Walmart wants to buy your company, then I went to school with guys who work at those big glass building firms, and they're a phone call away from me. They'll take my call. They may not take yours. And so you get access when you need it, but your billable hour doesn't go up to what theirs has to be in those buildings until we need it. And that's where my advice comes in, is I say, okay, you know what, it's time to hire a bigger gun. Or the other favorite example I like to use is what you think you need in a contract may take you 8 hours to explain or really go through the rigmarole with someone in that big glass building. And that's anywhere from $500 to $1,200 an hour, where it takes me 30 minutes to explain it to them because we both went to the same school and they understand when I say certain words, I actually mean those certain words. They don't have to stop and explain what those words mean to make sure I know what I'm doing.
Certainly goes back to the old saying, a fool does represent himself in court. You need that legal experience. Just for me, in my personal experience, the attorney that I worked with, very good attorney, She told me there's three things that a lawyer is looking for in a client is first and foremost, prompt payment. That they want prompt payment, and I adhere to that, and it's been a positive experience. Second thing she said is proper adherence to protocol. If I tell you to do something, you're paying me to tell you what to do, even though you don't want to do it, but you got to do it, and here's why. I kind of want to pick your brain about that a little bit, Aaron. And then the last thing, she's like, positive referrals. So if you send me clients that become paying clients, when your name comes up on my speed dial, I'm going to take your call sooner than somebody who's wasting my time with tire kickers. So what was she talking about? I mean, I know the answer, but when she's talking about doing what she tells me to do, it sounded like, and I've talked to other lawyers I've known, military and otherwise, who are like, it's very frustrating. You have this person paying you anywhere from $200 to $600 an hour. You tell them what to do because you're trying to help them out. They completely ignore you, completely just say, I'm going to do my own thing. And then a $200 an hour problem becomes a $20,000 problem real quick.
That's right.
What's that like? I'm sure you've experienced it. Maybe you haven't, but what's that like to deal with? Because expectations change, people get upset, and it becomes hard real quick, right?
It does. And you remember earlier I said the goal of a really good attorney, especially in a counseling mentality, is to never be surprised. And that includes by your own client. So I have to go, all right, listen, here's my advice. And it's not I'm your dad, do as I say, not as I do, or I'm your dad because I say so is why you need to do this. It's none of that. It's, hey, here's what you should do. If you don't, or my personal favorite, when you don't, here's the things that'll happen. And I'll be honest with you, I don't set my clients up, but I do give them an example early on. So I say, if you don't do these things, this is what will happen. And those things aren't that important in the big scheme of things. I don't tell them that, but they're not, because I want to give them an opportunity to prove to themselves, I know what I'm talking about and that I'm right. And when they don't do A and B, C, and D happen, they go, Aaron, you'll never believe it. I bet I will believe it. You're facing B, C, and D, and you're hoping E doesn't hit you in the face. Yeah, I believe you. All right, listen, here's what we're going to do. And we roll through it again. I'll go, okay, if you don't do these things, here's what's likely to happen. And they're not Chicken Little waiting for the sky to fall anymore, because they know if they don't do, F, G, and H, they know I and J are coming. So that's what I try to do. But that's exactly right. In security contracting, I would work with private clients and things like that. And I would say, okay, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Well, why would that happen? Because you pay me to tell you. That's why. I know what I'm talking about. If I don't, fire me.
Well, it can't be that simple. One of the things I find interesting is it is the practice of law. And when I think about the practice of law, I think of experience. And I'm just curious, how is it like working with your father-in-law, who has been in business for almost 30 years, and you've been a part of that? He's built this foundation. Do you ever find yourself going to him to, talk to a client, or bouncing things off him to understand, how we should approach this problem?
Every day. Every day. If I see that 4:30 rolls across the clock and I haven't gone and spoken to him, I'll just go talk to him to make sure. I tell him, hey, here's what I've done today. Did I miss anything? And I mean, it's just a sounding board, and it's a fresh perspective. Like you said, I mean, the law of the world was a lot different 30 years ago. And so his experiences and my experiences couldn't be more different, for the fact that we're in the same profession. And it's just great having that sounding board, and which is why, I mean, I probably could have, with what I know about marketing, my ability to run super lean and things like that. Sorry about that. My ability to run super lean and all these things, I probably could have hung my own shingle and did okay. And that's lawyer parlance for just open up my own shop. I probably could have done okay, but I could never replace or pay enough to get the experience I get here under his name. and just able to, kick in his door anytime I want and ask him, any fleeting question. Go ahead.
One of the things that comes to mind that I've asked several lawyers before is, I believe you get what you pay for when it comes to, attorney counsel. But also, I've had several attorneys tell me, please, if you have, as a client, a gut feeling that someone is giving you bad legal advice, that's the time to go find somebody else to talk to. You're not going to break any kind of, it's your money, your time, your situation. Get that extra help. And, these aren't people out of Suffolk Law telling me this. These are the old guys I meet down at the VFW who come there, who've been practicing law for 30, 40 years, who are like, get a second opinion. Get that perspective from somebody who's experienced. And I'm just curious, do you find that to be the case, not only in your own practice, but with people that you come across in the courtroom?
I think a lot of things, that don't pass the smell test, don't pass it for a reason. So everyone has experience, regardless of who it's from, and they've operated in some capacity for as many trips around the sun as they have in this country, most of them. Exclude everything I'm about to say for immigration, because that's just a whole nother ball of wax. But other than that, you grow up in these customs and hearing certain things and watching TV and things just being a certain way. And you have a pretty good feeling in your gut about what's right or what's just. And the law does its best to make those things happen. And judges, for the most part, do their best to make those things happen. So if a lawyer is telling you that, down is up and up is fish, yeah, absolutely go ask another one. And another thing that I think you might have been just knocking on the door of is attorney-client privilege. Attorney-client privilege is the client's privilege. Okay, it's ethically bound on me. I can't go discuss their case. It's their case, though. They can go discuss whatever they want with whoever they want. I may advise them not to go discuss it with the bum on the street or opposing counsel, but if they want to go see a different attorney who doesn't have a conflict and just ask them, absolutely. And, part of the business of getting what you pay for that helps firms like mine that have senior counsel and, junior counsel, if you will, or younger counsel, is I can go do, X hours on your case for this lower rate. And if I get in trouble or I need some help or we'll get in hot water, I can go ask the senior partner, I can go ask the owner for a higher rate, but it's for such little time and it just crushes what I could have taken 10 hours to figure out myself. So having tiered payments, it's why paralegals do so much of the work, because I don't want to bill you at my rate for stuff my paralegal could have done.
I've heard
I'm going to review it all at the end.
I've had, guys I've talked to in veteran circles get all kind of fired up. I pay all this money. I dealt with the paralegal more than the lawyer. That's bogus. That's wrong. And you just explain why that is.
And hey, let me be honest. A lot of attorneys do not like phones. They don't like to get tied down on the phone. They'd rather put it in writing and this and that and blah, blah, blah. I found out very, very early on in my career, in my adulthood, in my everything, there's certain things that just almost anything can be solved in person. 90% of that can be solved on the phone. A phone call, a 5-minute phone call between me and you can solve a lot of things that an email just can't, because you can read tones into my messages that weren't there or whatever the case may be. But really, it's just the attention, the value, and the time of saying, hey, cool, I pay this guy a lot of money, and he doesn't mind taking the time to pick up the phone and call him. And that's right.
Now, Aaron, I gotta ask you, though. I know for a fact, very intimately, that lawyers and attorneys bill on the 15-minute cycle, a lot of them. So
depending on the payment plan. I don't.
Okay, so what I would do sometimes is make sure I had at least 10 minutes of stuff to talk about before I pick up the phone to make sure that I got my 15 minutes worth. In other words, I mean, some people just call up their attorney just to gripe for 5 minutes. I'm like, no. And when I figured out that, okay, that's how it works. That's what I did. You don't do that. That's fine. Um,
Well, to be more clear, they actually bill in a 6-minute increment because that's a tenth of an hour. So your $500 an hour is actually 10 50-minute chunk, or I'm sorry, 10 $50 chunks. And I happen to know about some attorneys and some billing uh, structures, and they will write 15 emails inside of 6 minutes. Well, you can't bill a client less than a 6-minute increment. So what they just do, they build the same 6 minutes 15 times. And ethical, absolutely not, but hard to track. And I'm not casting aspersions on larger firms here, but it's a lot easier for larger firms with larger bills and larger clients to hide those things. It's very difficult when I sign, Bob's bicycle shop. It's very difficult for me to build in any kind of billing like that. So I just don't bother. I'm not going to count your 6 minutes.
and
I'm going to say, go ahead.
does that go back to your belief and your drive that you're in the community as a community partner, and you want that person to come back and do business with you, and you want them to succeed?
It does. It also looks at I'm looking for long-term relationships here. And in long-term relationships, I hope there's going to be an ebb and a flow of legal work. It's not just always going to be, I need my lawyer all the time. My house is on fire, figuratively, my house is on fire. If it's like that, maybe I'm not the best lawyer for you. Maybe you're not the best client for me, because obviously I'm not getting you to a safe place where you're not on fire all the time. So what I want is, hey, you know what? If our contract says you get 2 to 3 phone calls a month on an ongoing basis and you need 6 this month, I'm not going to say, okay, cool, don't have to talk to you next month, because I'm expecting the ebb to just kind of flow back down and things to calm down. But I'm not going to ditch you when things get crazy. That's not what an ongoing contract is about. But, there's a basis to, again, spread out the pain of legal fees, because just like insurance, some months you're going to be paying when nothing happens. But when something does happen, a lot of the sting is taken off because you've been paying when nothing has happened.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's my business model personally, and I model it after companies that are, either large enough or inexperienced enough or treading in waters where they need legal support, but they just don't have the time, the money, or the resources to hire full-time legal counsel.
Understood. And speaking of legal counsel, you work with small business, but you mentioned earlier that you also do criminal law.
I do. And so unlike criminal law, small business law, where you're barred does not matter. So the fact that I'm in Louisiana, if you have you're making bourbon in Kentucky and you want to give me a call and you want me to walk you through the LLC paperwork in Kentucky, I can do that. That's something that I'm able to do. Criminal law is restricted because criminal law and family law are the two most diverse areas of law across different states. What is a crime in Louisiana may not exactly be a crime in Texas, or it may carry different punishments or things like that. But yes, I do a good bit of criminal law. The way our parish, as you mentioned, different than county, but our parish does it is we have public defender contracts. And so public defenders aren't full-time, or they don't have to be. So they can go to firms. Well, our firm has one of the public defender contracts. So we get a certain amount of money every month, and I handle a certain docket. And everybody that goes in front of that judge is assigned to me as a public defender unless I have a conflict. So, yeah.
Well, it's just interesting that a lot of lawyers I know only focus on one aspect of law, whether it's merger and acquisition law, trade law, bankruptcy law, probate law, of course. And then, you're somebody I've met who has 2 different disciplines. And I'm just curious, is there any difference in experience? Is it the same set of skills? Business-wise, is it any different? It's just, in my limited experience in dealing with lawyers, it's not something I run across very often.
It's not, and that's a big difference in rural versus urban communities and urban lawyers. Urban lawyers, I mean, I could be a lawyer. I do bankruptcy for people between 25 and 45 years old, male preferred over female. And I could make that client base. And if I'm in Dallas, I could probably drive a really nice car and do very, very well and only stick to my client base. Simple facts are, in a rural area, you're left to your own devices, and you may have to expand a little bit. And, if you get uncomfortable, whatever, you call on some support, you call for some help. But there are people, there are what I call walk-in lawyers, and walk-in lawyers will take anything that walks in the door, whatever it may be. And again, that's just small town. There's an old saying, one lawyer town, that lawyer is poor. Two lawyers in a town, they're both rich. You need two lawyers to fight, right? But criminal, coming out of the Marine Corps, I was a firearms instructor in the private sector and stuff like that. So I'm not real shy when it comes to public speaking or anything like that. This is actually my first podcast interview. And, I don't mind jumping in and just kind of running my mouth. And so for that reason, criminal law was kind of thrust on me as like, you have to be in trial. You're just not worried about standing up and talking in front of a judge, and it doesn't matter. So no, I'm not. They're people too, and they have the same degree I do, and let's go. And that makes me very appealing to most of my criminal defendant clients, because I'm not very, reserved or uptight or lawyerly. I'm blunt and I'm straightforward, and I know the law, and I'm not worried about arguing it. And it makes me attractive to some of my business clients as well, though it's off-putting to some. But that's okay.
Yeah, we get that, and us Marines. I'm told that myself, and the people that love it, and more people love it than hate it. So I'm not going to change. That's good to know. So you're in this law firm in Ruston, Louisiana. This is family, centered, family owned. You mentioned growth. As your father-in-law is, been in this 30 years, I have to, I don't want to assume, but I have to think that there is some kind of aspect of transition coming up. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of change going on, I have to think, for your firm. And situations are changing. So how are you guys all handling change?
Well, we have, we discuss what we think is going to happen and what we want to happen, and we try and make those things as close as possible. It's ironically not much different than discussing it with a small business client, and I kind of look at the firm as my first and main client. And so I sit down with the other attorneys, or soon to be, my wife, my sister-in-law, my father-in-law. I say, hey, okay, what do we want? And what do we think is going to happen, and how do we make the two as close as possible? And obviously marketing was a big part. 30 years practicing. He never had a website, never had a Facebook, never had an internet presence at all whatsoever, never had a billboard, anything like that. And I know, depending on your listeners, some of these might be strange, because different states have different rules and laws when it comes to where attorneys can and can't advertise. Louisiana is a very big billboard advertising state for some reason. A lot of personal injury attorneys get on billboards,
Yep.
And so I came in and I said, okay, well, we need a website. And he said, why? I've never gotten a client off of the internet. And I said, yeah, that's because you're not on the internet. So we got him a Google My Business Suite profile and a website and all these things. And so, now rustonlawyers.com is us. And the fact that I was able to secure rustonlawyers.com kind of shows you the market as well. I'm not sure why, and it's kind of a phenomenon. I'd be really interested to follow up with anybody who wants to reach out to me or to you about why they think this is. But there's a very large age gap in attorneys, and it's about my age, which is I'm in my mid-30s, and about my father-in-law's age, which he's in his 60s. And there's not hardly any attorneys between there in those age groups. And I know people were going to law school. I know law schools were successful. So I don't know if they all just got sucked into urban areas during the booms, or if they ran to the urban areas during the downturns, the 08s and 2014s and things like this. But it just seems like there's a lot of solo practitioner old timers out there who don't have anyone to take over for them. And there's a lot of young guys like me who are just hanging their own shingle because they don't want to get caught up in the rat race of the urban areas, and they don't know where else to go except rural.
I got a friend of mine who is in his third year at Suffolk Law in Boston, and it's not the same thing, but he said, it's a very grueling career path if you let it. He's like, first of all, getting through law school is kind of like, the military, where they want to weed out the weak. So they purposely, test you to make sure that you can, do the job. And then to make money, you have to really hustle in a way that people don't understand that lawyers have to do that. And he's thinking about doing something else because he just doesn't want to deal with the hassle. He just thought he'd go and practice law. And I think you have an advantage here. I'm hearing somebody who practices law, but also has that business centric mindset to understand how to run a business. And that has to help you advise other people. That's not common.
It helps me a lot advise other people, but more it helps me run a firm. And as you said, I'm not running a firm yet, but that's definitely in the cards. That's definitely down the road. That's the expectation, is that he's going to transition to, kind of an emeritus status, and I'll step into the day-to-day operations. But self-awareness, I would say, is the number one thing. If you think you want to go to law school, if you are in law school and you think you want to practice this way and not that way, or however, just be self-aware. Do you want to run a law firm, or do you want to practice law only? Do you want to do both? If you only want to practice law, then there's plenty of people like me. I need, as many lawyers as I can get who only want to practice law, because I can sign enough clients to keep them all busy. I know I can. It's ironic. Practicing the law for my clients slows me down from signing more clients. I love helping my clients. I love practicing law, but in my particular firm, the skill sets that each of us have, I'm the one who signs clients. I'm the one who sells clients. I'm the one who does that stuff. Now, my father-in-law is extremely skilled at it because he 30 years that he had to, and so he knows exactly how to do it. And he's taught me a lot of things I didn't know. But natural personalities, if he didn't have to, I don't think he'd ever come out of his office. I think he likes to read and write and research and practice law. And if he never had to talk to a client, I don't think he would. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a whole team of lawyers like that in different places. I mean, Walmart probably has 100 of those type of lawyers and one of me type, for every one of me. And so it's just different strokes for different folks. But your friend, I would give him some solace in the fact that there's three real grinders in becoming an attorney. One's going to law school and making it through. 2 is passing the bar. 3 is practicing law. And they're all completely different. They all have completely different skill sets. And there's completely different styles and ways to do all 3 of them. And so, don't give up on practicing law just because you don't like law school, or you hear horror stories, or whatever the case may be, because it's just different for everybody.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, this is why I love doing, Oscar Mike Radio, is getting to talk to people like yourself who had a really different career path in life, and who also, one of the things I am really, pleased to see is, once again, it's the military veteran who gets out of the military, reinvents himself. So you got the military, you did the private side, and then you reinvent yourself to be self-aware, to go into law, do those things you just said. And now, even though you're practicing law, you're trying to become something else. It's just a gradual progression of growth in a way that a lot of people don't see. And I'd have to think, for people looking for a legal practice in the Ruston area of Louisiana, that offers something different than, say, most of your competitors or peers in your area.
It does. I would say the 2 biggest things that give me an advantage over non-veterans and things like that, especially in the practice of law, is, 1, I'm used to constantly reinventing myself, because every unit I went to, every different aspect, there was always there's an F&G period where you just have to be the new guy, suck it up and learn what you don't know, and realize you don't know what you don't know. And then second is calling for support. Hey, I am this designation. I am this guy. I'm in this unit. Hey, I may know that thing, but that's not the role that I'm supporting the mission in today. So I'm humble enough and realize enough that we have to call in support. And there's just guys out there who are better suited to do what I can do. And the mission is the number one thing. And in the practice of law, the mission is the client. And so I have no problem sending some of, or sometimes all of his work across the street to another attorney. And that attorney, I've gotten calls constantly. Hey man, like I really appreciate that referral. That was like right up my alley. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Why would I want to research and Google and learn all the crap you already know? And I hope you return the favor. Don't go learn criminal law. Just send me the guy. I'm not going to steal him. I'm not going to cook him and eat him. I'm going to do the work and I'm going to say, hey, go back to your dude because that was your dude. Or if he sticks with me, well, I guess he gets to make the choice. But just doing the best things that we're all capable of doing and enjoy doing are a big thing to me. And earlier you alluded to having 2 practice areas. And I think it's imperative to have at least more than one thing that lights you up, because you're going to get sick of one thing. There's days, and I go home to my wife and I just say, today was not a good day to be a criminal defense attorney. And she'll say, well, what are you working on tomorrow? I'll say, small business stuff, because you just got to relight yourself and, keep yourself moving forward and happy. And sometimes that angle doesn't work. So we shift and reevaluate and move forward.
Awesome. So as we wind down here, I got to ask about your wife, who you call the CO. I interviewed a Marine business owner a couple weeks ago, and he talked about his wife and what an impact she had on his ability to, get his business going. What has that been like? What's that dynamic like? Marrying the woman who you're eventually going to be working with or already are working with in this field.
I enjoy it. I think it's funny. A lot of lawyers have, obviously we have a reputation as we're going to pick a fight anywhere there is to pick a fight, and we're going to argue everything all the way to the bone and things like that. And it's funny because ever since I've gotten my diploma and my license, it's actually the opposite. 2 of us go in and we know the other one can argue. So we just, really care about this? No, not really. Okay, cool. Well, let's just flip a coin then, because it's pretty easy. So when I've both as a Marine and as a businessman, I've dated women who I felt like on some kind of resume didn't qualify, or maybe I didn't qualify to date them, or there was a big power dynamic. And I think there's a huge advantage in marrying your one-to-one equal, and in being able to recognize that, whether it's on paper or you just recognize something in that person. And that's what I've done. And so it's easy for me when she argues with me. I don't think she thinks I'm stupid or, dismisses my idea. It's okay. Let me actually listen to what you're saying and respect you as an equal. And, we can go forward. That being said, my wife is also my biggest cheerleader and, will support the dumbest ideas I have, as long as they're not going to harm, me or her or our kids or anything like that. So.
Amazing. That's really great to hear. And that's the reason I ask about it is, several business owners, leaders of nonprofit, CEOs that I've interviewed on Oscar Mike Radio have almost all of them have said the same thing, that their wife is, whether she's a veteran or not, whether she's in the business or not, that relationship has helped grow their business in a way that they can't really quantify. So it's just always amazing to hear that kind of support being given. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not in Louisiana. I used to live in Louisiana, drove through Ruston all the time, near Louisiana Tech, if I remember correctly.
Ruston, that's right, home to Louisiana Tech. Go Dogs.
Right, and Terry Bradshaw and the guy he replaced, who's the duck call guy, I forget, Phil.
Yeah, you're talking about Ducks Unlimited. They are actually out of West Monroe, which is about 15, 20 minutes east.
Just a real sports thing here real quick. Phil was a starting quarterback at the time him and Terry went to Tech, if I remember correctly. That's right. He just walked away from football and, Terry got the nod. And Terry has said several times that Phil's a better quarterback than he was. I always thought that was funny.
It is, and I've actually heard that story from some Tech alum, which it's funny. And now it's Carl Malone now lives here and does invest in the town very well, and we're glad to have him around. But just guy who found Ruston and liked Ruston.
Nice. Ladies and gentlemen, it's just always a pleasure to get to talk to a veteran who has done the kind of things that Aaron has done. If you're a veteran and you're thinking about reinventing yourself, I hope you get something out of this conversation where if you know what you want to do and can pursue it, you're going to have the kind of success you want. Aaron, what's the website for people to find Ruston Lawyers or the law office of James Wilkerson? Is it
Oh,
Ruston?
you got it. It's Ruston Lawyers. That's with an
It's
S.com.
stuck in my mind.
It's easy. That's why I got it. I was
No,
surprised as you that I could actually get it.
well, think about it, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, if you're in Ruston and you need a lawyer, just go to Ruston Lawyers. That is, I mean, there's people that spend a lot of money, Aaron, on branding who got what you did for free. That's fantastic.
And then Facebook page is the same thing. It's at Ruston Lawyers. We do have an Instagram. I'm not doing it yet because I'm not a 16-year-old girl, so I don't really know if we're ever going to use it. But it's locked up, so you can't use it. It's a good thing.
I got Instagram, and I got to do it, and I'm like, no one's going to, and it surprises me sometimes. So it's funny. But I'm going to have all the links to how you can contact Ruston Lawyers and Oscar Mike Radio posts. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere else. And I want to thank you, Aaron, for coming on the show. I've learned a whole lot, and I hope you have too. And if you need to get a hold of a lawyer, and if you're not in Louisiana but have a small business you're trying to get going, I don't know. Aaron has piqued my interest in a lot of different ways. So thank you very much, Aaron.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, Travis. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you very much. As we say at Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission in flight.